This is the RTX 3060 Ti. It came out December the 2nd, 2020 for a retail price of $399. It has 8 gigabytes of VRAM, and this specifically is the Zotac model, the Twin Edge model. And overall, it has turned out to be a pretty good card, but today I want to talk about how it stacks up in 2023, and spoiler alert, it stacks up quite well. Unfortunately, in 2023, the card is still retailing for about $400, give or take, depending on where you buy it from and which model specifically you buy. I was able to get this card for $400 after a promotional discount on Newegg, but currently that promotional discount has gone away, and now the card is back to $418 on Newegg. Now, that is not something you want to see in 2023 on a product that launched in 2020. But unfortunately, the GPU market is still awful right now. And so really there's not a lot of great options. And that's why I'm kind of doing this series now. Hey, let's take some older cards that are relatively cheap and see how well they stack up in 2023. So if you appreciate this type of content, you can really help me out by hitting the like button, dropping a comment, and if you're new, getting subscribed. Now on the screen right now, here's a list of games I plan on testing this card against. All these games are less than a year old and they're all newer than the card itself, so it is a fair test. And right now you're seeing all the test bench specifications in which I used in order to actually test this card. And lastly, I need to play a quick word from my video sponsor, and then we will get right into the benchmarks, so stay tuned, don't go anywhere. Are you still paying full retail prices for your Windows 10 activation keys? If so, why? Go to SCDKey.com and pick yourself up a Windows 10 Pro activation key for as little as $22.09. Actually, you can save yourself another 25% by entering my personal discount code. And there's no need to worry because these keys are completely legal and safe and they actually work. You can see me activating Windows here right now. While you're on the website, feel free to check out other pieces of software like Microsoft Office. Thank you SCDKey for sponsoring today's video. And we're kicking things off with the RTX 3060 Ti at 1440p on the balance preset in Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 2022. As you can see, our average frame rate is about 90 FPS, which is actually quite solid, all things considered. And our 1% lows right now are around 70 FPS. Spoiler alert, it does go down a little bit further here in a minute to about 66 FPS. But our GPU temperature is staying below 70°, and our GPU utilization is between 98 and 99%. So overall, that's still fairly good, all things considered. I think overall this is a pretty solid playing experience. I chose the balance preset because I feel like it's a happy medium for all settings, but obviously you can turn settings down a little bit further. You can crank some other things up if you want better visual fidelity or if you want better performance. That is an option if you choose to go that route. As you can see, we finished the benchmark with an average FPS of 94 frames per second. And we're back at 1080p on the balance preset, and as you can see, our average frame rate is up to about 115 FPS now, 116, 117. It keeps rising as the benchmark keeps playing on, so that's really great. Our active frame rate is above 140 FPS in some cases. We dip down to 128, 130, but still not that bad, all things considered. Our 1% low is the average of our previous test here at 1440p, and so that is definitely a much better experience. While you can use the 3060 Ti at 1440p, I would highly recommend using it for 1080p gaming because as you can see here, it's doing so much better at 1080p. The temperatures are lower at 66°. The utilization is exactly where we want it to be, between 98 to 99%. And lastly, we finished with an average frame rate of 125 FPS. And now we're looking at Gotham Knights, which is a game that honestly is perfect for this type of test because overall, this game launched with a ton of technical problems and performance-related issues, and so now we get to see how much better the game has gotten after several months of being on the market, and we get to see how the 3060 Ti stacks up against it. And as you can see, we're at 1440p on the medium preset, and our GPU temperature is around 67 to 68°. Our utilization is kind of low. It's, 80s to 90s. It's all over the place. It's not quite that great. Not where we want to see it at 98 to 99%. Our average frame rate is 112 FPS. Our 1% lows are at 75 FPS, give or take. And our active frame rate is not much higher than our actual average. And so overall, this is not a bad performance result given its 1440p on a game that launched with a ton of technical performance problems. But now I want to see how well the 3060 Ti stacks up on Gotham Knights at 1080p. And now we're looking at Gotham Knights at 1080p on the medium preset, and our GPU temperature is great at 63°, and our utilization is not so great at 75 to 80%. Wow, this game still hasn't quite locked that down yet, but it is 1080p, so we're more CPU bound than we are GPU bound. Now, our average frame rate is around 125 FPS, give or take. Our 1% lows on the bike right now are 84 to 85 FPS, and our active frame rate is between 120 to 130 FPS. It really just depends on the situation, and of course if you're on the bike, your frame rate is going to dip down, but in combat, you know, walking around the city or whatever, you know, the frame rate is going to be a little bit higher. But overall, the numbers are better across the board at 1080p, which is exactly what we would expect to see here. And so again, I have to say, if you're using a 3060 Ti in 2023, I think you should view it more as a 1080p card as opposed to a 1440p card. And now one of my favorite games to not only play but also benchmark, and that is Hogwarts Legacy. And we're looking at 1440p on the medium preset, running around Hogsmeade. You can see our average frame rate is about 70 FPS. Our 1% lows are terrible. We're in the 30s, and our active frame rate is about what you'd expect it to see. Sometimes it's 65, sometimes it's 75, and so it averages out to be about 70 FPS. Now, our overall utilization of the GPU is around 90%, give or take, a few dips down to the 80s and a few spikes up to 93, 94. And our overall GPU temperature is around 67°C, which is actually not bad at all. Hogsmeade is incredibly demanding. It's always been that way ever since the game has released, even after multiple patches now. The game is known to be CPU bound. We are using the 5800X here, and no, I don't see the 5800X bottlenecking the 3060 Ti at all whatsoever. I know I'm going to get a comment about that, but I just figured I'd let you know I don't think that's bottlenecking the GPU at all. And now one other test I like to do is to get on the broom and actually fly around, because what I've come to learn is that even more demanding than Hogsmeade itself is actually flying around the Hogwarts grounds. And as you can see, our active frame rate is right there at the 60 FPS marker. We're 61, 62 FPS, maybe 63 in some cases. We had a slight dip down to 59 FPS right there. And our overall average has dropped down to 67 FPS. And so as you can see, you can definitely have a playable experience at 1440p on the medium preset with the 3060 Ti in Hogwarts Legacy. But now I want to check out 1080p on the medium preset. And now we're back in Hogsmeade at 1080p on the medium preset. As you can see, our average frame rate is 82 FPS. Our active frame rate is closer to the higher 70s, which is pretty good. And our 1% lows went from the 30s to the 40s. So a little bit better there, but still not quite where we would want to see it. Our GPU temperature is around 64°C, and our utilization is not that great. You're talking about 70% utilization, give or take. Sometimes it's up to 78, 80%. Sometimes it's down to 65%. It really just depends. Again, though, this game is more CPU bound, especially at 1080p here. And so that may be playing a factor there on the GPU utilization. Now we're coming outside of Hogsmeade, getting back on our broom, flying up in the air, and now I'm very interested to see what the actual frame rate is here. And as you can see, our average frame rate is still around 84 FPS. Our active frame rate is in the 80s. So in this particular case, instead of the active frame rate getting worse on the broom compared to Hogsmeade, it actually got better. And so 1080p here is definitely a little bit better than 1440p. Now, one thing I will say here is that Hogwarts Legacy is a single player story driven experience. And so really at 1440p on the medium preset, you can play this game at 60 FPS and have a totally fine, enjoyable experience. And so if you want that higher fidelity in your resolution, then maybe 1440p is the way to go for you in this game. But overall, from a performance perspective, 1080p is still definitely the best way to enjoy this game. And I absolutely love these two suits of armor kicking the crap out of each other. I'm so happy I was able to record that. And now we're swinging through the city with Spider-Man Remastered at 1440p on the medium preset. Look, I've done extensive testing on this game. You can actually use the 3060 Ti at both 1080p and 1440p and run the high to very high preset and have a very enjoyable frame rate and playing experience overall. But I'm showing you the medium preset numbers just to stay consistent with this video and all the other benchmarks. But as you can see, 1440p on the medium preset, our average frame rate is about 120 FPS. Our 1% lows are in the 80s. Our GPU temperature is at 67°C. Our utilization is in the 90s. Still not quite where you want to see it, 98, 99%, but still 94 to 95% is not terrible at all. And also, Spider-Man Remastered, like other games in this video, is actually quite CPU bound. And so it's one of those things where even at 1440p, you're still going to have those CPU limitations there, but overall 95% on the utilization is not awful. But still, as you can see, we're well above 100 FPS across the board, no matter how many people are shooting rockets at us, if we're flipping around or throwing barrels or whatever. At 1440p on the medium preset, this is more than a playable experience. But now let's go ahead and take a look at 1080p. And here we are, 1080p medium preset, swinging through the city. As you can see, our average average frame rate is around 127 FPS. Our active frame rate is anywhere between 130 to 170 FPS at times. We have peaks and lows, of course, and our 1% lows are in the mid 70s, 74 to 76 FPS. And so overall, that's not terrible at all. Our GPU temperature has dropped down to about 60 C, and that is to be expected because we did lower the resolution to 1080p, which is less demanding than 1440p. Our overall utilization has dropped from 95% down to about 70%. So again, not what you want to see, but again, it's 1080p, so we're more CPU bound than GPU bound here. And overall, our average frame rate remains above 120 FPS, which is really a rock solid experience. And as I said before, if you want to increase the preset here from medium to high or high to very high, you will still have a very good experience overall with really good playable frame rates well above 60 FPS. Okay, so wrapping things up here, the 3060 Ti is still going strong even in 2023. I still think it is a great GPU for anyone looking to game on a budget. Now, it's not my overall favorite GPU. It's not the first GPU I would run out and buy personally, but if you're looking to do some light gaming and, you know, running the best on Ultra isn't necessarily your thing, you're just trying to play the latest titles and have a good, well-rounded experience, I think the 3060 Ti is a great option and I do recommend it. I did not test ray tracing in this video simply because a 3060 Ti is really not powerful enough to really do ray tracing like that. If you do turn it on, you'll absolutely have to use DLSS. And no, I didn't test DLSS either or FSR simply because I wanted to show you the native performance. If you really want to see DLSS and FSR comparisons, let me know in the comment section down below. If you enable DLSS or FSR, the performance will only increase from there. So anyway, thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the like button because it goes a long way in helping me out. If you're new, get subscribed, drop a comment for the algorithm, please. And until next time, E-Rock out.